Frank did everything right. He called his insurance company before he turned 65. He asked them, point blank, "Do I need Medicare?" And they told him, no, he was fine. He could stay on his work plan. So he did. 14 months later, Frank had a heart procedure. Total bill, $46,000. His insurance company paid $0 of it. Not because Frank lied, not because he missed a form, because of one number nobody had explained to him, a number buried in his employer's paperwork that decided the moment he turned 65, whose job it was to pay first. That number is 20, and by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which side of that number you're on, because it might be the difference between saving thousands of dollars or ending up like Frank. Here's the thing about Medicare that almost nobody explains correctly. Turning 65 does not mean you have to enroll. Millions of people delay it every year, legally, with zero penalty, but millions of others delay it thinking they're safe, and they're not. The line between those two groups isn't your health, your income, or your age. It's a handful of very specific facts about your situation, and most people never find out which fact applies to them until a bill like Frank's shows up. So instead of walking you through rules, I'm going to walk you through 3 camps. By the end, you'll know which camp you're in. Stick around for the third one, because that's where the expensive mistakes happen, and I promise it's not the one you're expecting. Let's start with the camp everybody wants to be in. People who can delay Medicare completely, penalty-free, no expiration date. You're in this camp if you're still actively working and covered by a group health plan through that job, or your spouse is still working and you're on their plan. That's it. That's the whole requirement. The government doesn't punish you for staying on solid employer coverage instead of jumping to Medicare the day you turn 65. Here's a story that surprises people. Maria's husband retired at 63. Maria kept working until 67 and stayed on her company's health plan the entire time, including 2 full years past her own 65th birthday. When she finally retired and enrolled in Medicare, she paid exactly the same premium as someone enrolling for the very first time. No penalty, no back payments. Because she was actively employed with real group coverage the whole time, the clock never started. But, and this is where Camp 1 gets tricky, there's a silent trapdoor hiding inside this camp, your HSA. If you or your employer are putting money into a health savings account, the second you accept any piece of Medicare, even just Part A, the free part, that account is frozen. Not reduced, frozen. No more contributions from you or your employer for the rest of your life. I've talked to people who signed up for free Part A because a coworker told them to and accidentally shut off thousands of dollars a year in HSA contributions without realizing the two were connected at all. If you're in this camp and you have an HSA, the answer is simple: touch nothing. Not even Part A. Camp 2 is bigger than people think, and it's the one where a little bit of math beats blind assumptions every time. You're in this camp if you technically could delay Medicare you're working, or your spouse is, but your coverage isn't actually great. Maybe the premiums are high, maybe the network is thin. In our experience, it's close to a coin flip. Roughly half the people who think their work plan is obviously better are wrong once you actually run the comparison against Medicare. Here's an example almost nobody thinks about. David's company covered 100% of his own premium, but only 60% of his wife Elena's. Elena wasn't even employed there. She was on his plan as a dependent, paying real money every month for mediocre coverage. Once Elena turned 65, moving her onto Medicare on her own actually cost the household less than keeping her on David's plan while David stayed put, since his employee coverage was fully paid for. Same household. 2 completely different decisions, made correctly instead of automatically. This camp also covers the age gap situation. One spouse hits 65, the other doesn't. If your coverage is solid, staying put and waiting for your spouse to catch up is usually the easy button. If it's not, splitting the household, one spouse onto Medicare, the other onto an ACA marketplace plan, sometimes wins. You have to actually compare the two, not guess. Then there's the group that gets ignored constantly: veterans, federal employees, and postal workers. If you have VA benefits, technically you can skip Medicare and just use VA facilities. But the VA itself recommends you still enroll because your VA funding and access can depend on it. And because the day you want to see a civilian doctor outside the VA system, Medicare is the thing that makes that possible. If you have FEHB, TRICARE, or postal retiree benefits, the rules get specific fast. Some of those plans flatly require you to pick up Medicare Parts A and B the moment you're eligible, whether you want to or not. And finally, the expats. If you're living overseas and you know for certain you're never coming back to the US, you genuinely don't need Medicare, but pretty sure isn't certain. I've seen people move home after 8 years abroad, try to enroll, and get hit with a penalty they'll pay for the rest of their life because certain turned into, actually, my daughter had a baby and I moved back. This is the camp that matters most, because this is where good intentions turn into $46,000 bills. Remember the number 20? Here it is. If your company or your spouse's company has 20 or more employees, you're protected. The law calls your group plan the primary payer. That means when a bill comes in, your work insurance pays first, and Medicare, if you have it, pays whatever's left. Your employer legally cannot pressure you, bribe you, or force you to give that up for Medicare, full stop. But if your company has fewer than 20 employees, the entire relationship flips. Medicare becomes the primary payer even if you don't have it yet. Your small employer's insurance becomes secondary. And here's the part that ruins people. If you haven't enrolled in Medicare and a bill comes in, your insurance company can look at that bill and say, Medicare was supposed to pay first. They didn't, because this person doesn't have Medicare. We're not obligated to cover this until they do. Some insurers pay anyway out of goodwill. Plenty don't. Frank's didn't. This is also the one exception to the rule that employers can't push you toward Medicare. If your company has fewer than 20 people, they absolutely can encourage, incentivize, or outright require you to move to Medicare at 65, because keeping you off it creates real financial risk for them too. If this is you, there is exactly one move that matters. Before you decide anything, find out in writing, if you can, whether your small group insurer honors claims for Medicare-eligible employees who haven't enrolled yet. Don't ask a coworker. Don't assume. Some companies are fine. Frank's wasn't, and he found out at the worst possible moment. Beyond company size, there are 4 situations where waiting isn't a smart gamble. It's just an expensive one. 1, you turn 65 with no health coverage at all. There's no group plan protecting you, so the penalty clock starts immediately. 2, you're on COBRA. COBRA feels like real insurance because it is your old group plan, but for Medicare's purposes, it doesn't count as active employer coverage. Ride COBRA past 65 without Medicare, and the clock is running the whole time. 3, a retiree health plan. These plans are generous right up until the fine print, and the fine print almost always assumes you'll pick up Medicare the moment you're eligible. Skip that step, and you can face the exact same who pays first problem as the small group trap, plus penalties if you try to add Medicare later. 4, an ACA marketplace plan. The subsidies that make these plans affordable disappear the moment you become Medicare eligible, whether or not you actually enroll. So a plan that cost you $200 a month can jump to $700 overnight for coverage Medicare would have given you for less. Here's why all of this matters years down the line, not just right now. Skip Part B when you should have had it. And the penalty is 10% of the premium for every full year you went without it permanently. Not a one-time fee. A permanent surcharge, recalculated every year against whatever the new premium is. Delay 2 years without a valid reason, and you're not paying today's premium, you're paying today's premium plus 20%. Forever. Part D works the same way in spirit. Smaller in scale. Roughly 1% of the national base premium for every month without creditable drug coverage. Added to your bill for life, increasing as the base premium increases. And here's the twist, almost nobody catches. Some employer plans give you real medical coverage, but lousy drug coverage, meaning you can be completely safe on the Part B side and still get hit with a Part D penalty years later from the exact same job, without ever missing a beat on your health insurance. The only way to know for sure is to ask your HR or benefits team one specific question. Is our prescription drug coverage creditable under Medicare? Get that answer in writing. So back to Frank. Frank was actively working. His company had 14 employees. Nobody ever told him that number mattered, so nobody told him his employer's plan had quietly become the secondary payer the moment he turned 65. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't misinformed by choice. He just never learned there was a question he was supposed to ask. That's really what this whole video comes down to. Medicare at 65 isn't one rule for everybody. It's a set of forks that depend on your employer's size, your HSA, your spouse's age, your coverage type, and what your specific insurer will actually do with a claim. Get the fork right and you save real money. Get it wrong and you find out the hard way, usually at the worst possible time. If you want to know exactly where you land, don't guess, talk to a licensed agent who actually knows the insurers in your state, because small group or large group can change what's true for you specifically. And if this saved you from becoming the next Frank, that's exactly what this channel is for. Hit subscribe, because the next video breaks down the one VA and TRICARE decision I mentioned earlier that deserves its own deep dive. I'll see you there.